Rewire your mind and reclaim your soul. Friends, good evening. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Once again, this is your channel, Gnosis Arizona. And in this session, I'm going to tell you this session is going to be a call to deep inner transformation. This is not a sermon. Please hope that you don't take it that way. But we're going to make this real talk that is going to be rooted in a little bit of psychoanalysis and a lot of authenticity. So for all purposes, this is not therapy. I want you to think of this as meta therapy. This is wonderful input for you to work on your real shadow work. And from that perspective, let's call this the revolution of the dialectic. If you haven't heard this word before, if you're not clear what this is, dialectic is a way in which we can examine different perspectives. Here is a way of us to learn so that we can challenge assumptions, that we can get to better comprehensive conclusions. And we do so by looking at creating a new idea that is based on the truth that exists between the idea that is presented and the opposing statement. Let's see how is it that we bring this to use. The great masters tell us, we are moved by sincerity. We seek well-being. We all face and we go through difficult circumstances in life, seeking change. And in any case, says Samael Aun Weor, I think, and perhaps you would as well, that well-being results from self-respect. This is a very profound statement. Now let me show you this. These are some images from downtown Phoenix. We see some from San Francisco, others from Philly. And what we see here is an environment that used to be beautiful, and at some point in time, people invaded the area. As the people came in, they brought their things, the things that are tangible and the things that are intangible. They brought in their belongings, and they brought in their thoughts, their sentiments, and their actions. And as that happened, what used to be a beautiful landscape turned out to be a horrendous artifact. It is likely that you maybe have seen some of this in your own city. But we tell you this, one thing that you will find common in all these images and common everywhere you go where you find this. This is a lot of people that at some point in their existence, they were very happy. These are people who may have experienced many successes in life. They perhaps were even thriving. And something changed in their life condition where they now find themselves here like this. For all purposes, this is equivalent to what is known as the pleromatic fall of man, or the fall of man from its divine condition. They used to live in a very thriving condition, and now they do not. And when we see this, we need to take what we receive through the senses and make use of it in a way that is constructive, edifying, and dignifying to the consciousness. We would make a mistake if we judge them. Actually, if we point our fingers and we accuse them as being a problem, that would also be a mistake. Because we know that others are a reflection of ourselves. We know that what we judge in others are the very same inferior aspects that exist in us. So it stands to good reason that we stop for a second and we ask ourselves, what is really happening inside of me? This we must know. And this teaching is not a new thing. This teaching comes from the writings of Immanuel Kant in his book, The Critique of Pure Reason, where he states, the exterior is a reflection of the interior. And whether we like or not what we're seeing outside, this is something that we must accept with some degree of sincerity. I mean, if we all want to change, that's good. But real change can only start with this inner honesty. We must look at what is happening inside without filters. We must look at it as exactly as it is. We must put aside our shame, and we must see it as an opportunity for growth. What Immanuel Kant is saying here is that our life is a reflection of our own vibe. So we cannot go around and manifest a better life while all along, this is what is inside of us. And maybe you'll say, oh, it's impossible. Inside, I am not like that. Well, okay, and there is no argument to that. But we will tell you this. If there is any negative self-talk, And in many ways, if we treat ourselves like trash, with self-deprecating language, with self-minimizing and all that, and we do the same for others, then there cannot be any opportunity for us to move into a higher level of being. Let's go back to this topic of well-being and self-respect. Well-being results from self-respect. The more self-respect we have, the greater will be our well-being. Let's make sure that we understand this, because as we look at our current state, we are living bound by a series of self-imposed agreements. And these self-imposed agreements, we, the ego, because the ego is a really bad secretary, has confused that with self-respect. I mean, we have self-imposed agreements that are related with the way that we look, our physical appearance, with validation, what we receive and we give others, with our sense of superiority, with comparisons, with ambitions. Wait, let me go a little into this so that this makes sense. We have confused self-respect with these self-imposed agreements because at some point we have convinced ourselves on how is it that we should look. Whether it's the hair or the makeup or the changes that we make to our body, any of those things. Because we have convinced ourselves of how is it that we should be acknowledged, how people should validate us, the things that we deserve and what we don't deserve. I mean, we think that we're better. In many cases, we think it's that other people, they don't appreciate me or they envy me. What? This is what we say. In many of these self-imposed agreements, we have already predefined what is it that we're going to do to seek the favor of others. We want their recognition. I mean, and it's true, some people don't like public recognition, but there is always that thing that exists where people would like to hear somebody say, oh, that's a good job. If it's not that, we're always comparing. And we fail to realize that with every comparison, we are hurting the person that we are comparing to, and we're hurting ourselves. So here, the fundamental problem is that we measure our well-being based on all of these things. And no wonder we are always caught in a roller coaster of ups and downs, of good moments, sour moments, of that person said this, my day is ruined, etc. No. Friends, if we are speaking of our well-being, we must keep in check our self-respect. Well-being results from self-respect. Knowing that, know as well that what we offer others, what we give others, is what we get back. So from that perspective, everything we offer, everything that we give must be the very best that can emanate from our heart. I mean, there are 6 different dynamics of expression. These expressions have to do with how is it that you give to yourself? How is it that you give to your children, to your spouse? How is it that you give to your friends, to the people at work, to the community? How you give back to the world? How you give of your sacrifice, your innermost? So in those 6 different dynamics, we have to learn to honor the needs, your needs and the needs of your spouse and your children and your friends and your family, etc., etc. When you give kindness, it is kindness that you must give to you, but also to your spouse, to your children, etc. Empathy, responsibility. This is the way that we must start expressing this self-respect. I mean, if we are a vehicle full of values of our being, values that with the being divine, that they are pure, but meanwhile, there is so much suffering around us. Meanwhile, we feel so miserable so many times. Then we have to realize at some point that we are not serving the innermost. We are still stuck in the ego. That is our default setting. And that has to change. We are what we serve. I mean, I know that this sounds really good, like philosophically, but how can we bring this into practice? I would argue that we need a psychological revolution, but this revolution is not one of psychologists and prescribed medication. We're speaking here of a psychological revolution where we deliberately, willfully set the use of our creative power, and we put all of those creative energies at the service of our being. How do we do that? How can we use of this willpower, of this creative energy, to make it at the service of our being. If we're speaking about self-respect, let's start by abandoning all of our delinquencies. Any substance abuse that we have, let's abandon that. Okay, maybe we can say, oh, I'm not addicted to drugs. That does not apply to me. Fine. But maybe you just love wine. Maybe you love beer. Maybe you love alcohol of any different kinds. Maybe you love energy drinks. Maybe you love coffee. Let's learn to enjoy these things with responsibility and stop the abuse. In terms of abandoning delinquencies, skipping school, skipping responsibilities, navigating our way around loopholes to not get things done, we have to stop that. But most of all, in terms of abandoning our delinquencies, we must abandon the bad habit of disrespecting others. With this, we say judgments. We say hypocrisy. We must abandon talking behind people's backs. We must abandon this bad habit of making pretend with the people around us. I mean, in terms of disrespecting others, what should we stop? There should be no more deceit. There should be no more hiding, no more fake masks. It should be truth only, no fronts. It must be authenticity or nothing. That is what we owe others. Because if we are what we serve, if what we get is exactly what we give others, then isn't that exactly what we should do? Truth only, no fronts. In terms of self-respect, don't steal. I mean, if you like shoplifting, please don't do that. But also don't steal ideas. Don't steal emotions. Don't steal affections. Don't steal people's vitality. Don't be an energy vampire. Don't steal people's time. You see, this is all part of self-respect. And when it comes to the core source of our creative powers, in terms of self-respect, don't waste your energy on empty hookups. Safeguard your creative power. Safeguard the creative power of others. That sacred energy within us is not meant to be used for casual play. Protect your essence. Dear friends, your body is not a playground to satisfy the desires of your ego, and much less to satisfy the desires of the egos of others. Don't waste your energy on any empty hookups. And when it comes to relationships, honor those who trust you with their soul. Those who have vowed to spend their time with you, to give you their very best years. Don't betray them. Loyalty is sacred. If you are not all in, don't act like you are. These are fundamental things that we can do for our self-respect. And when it comes to interacting with others, when others are triumphant, when they are successful, celebrate their success. Build upon their wins. Stand up and give them a standing ovation. Do not envy their achievements. Be humble, be simple, abandon your laziness, become active, decent person, be clean. This is all what we can do about self-respect. And also, don't give way to negative thoughts. Don't give way to negative emotions. When you refrain from negative thoughts and emotions, you start creating within you a new superior individuality. Every time that you feel yourself triggered and those thoughts start getting wild, those emotions start getting very dense, when you refrain that helps crystallize in your immediate environment the substance of sacrifice. In that substance that crystallizes as a canvas, you have the opportunity to stencil, to paint the great work that is your life. Refrain. Don't give way to these negative thoughts. Don't give way to these negative emotions. As you give that is what life gives back to you. And it starts creating a change in your life that is called moving you to a higher, to a superior level of being. This scale, the levels of being, is presented in a beautiful story, which is the story of Jacob. When Jacob anoints the stone with oil, and as he rests his head on the stone, he falls asleep, and in that astral experience, he sees that there is a ladder that extends from the heavens to the earth, from matter to spirit. And in that ladder, he sees beings that descend step by step, and beings that rise step by step. Each one of the steps in that ladder is a change in the level of being. And as you move to a higher or a superior level of being, suddenly your life starts changing. New circumstances, new relationships, new opportunities, new people. The change is economical, social, emotional, intellectual, physical. This creates a change in your level of being. And it is important that we know that, because if we are moved by this inner impulse, this fire that comes from our being to create this change, as we affect this change, the level of being continues to attract our own life. So if we look outside and what we see outside is chaos, and we have already learned from Immanuel Kant that the exterior is a reflection to the interior, that chaos is inside of us. And if the level of being attracts our own life, no wonder we are surrounded by so many dramas. So change the level of being, the dramas will change. So how do we do that? We can start by changing our self-image. Our self-image is our psychological image. And this psychological image that we have of our own selves is pretty poor, it's defective. In fact, it is quite horrendous. Within our environment, we reflect our misery, our vanity, and what we are. If you look around in your room and what you have in your room is chaos, that is part of your psychological image. If your room is clean but your closet is a complete chaos, that chaos that exists hidden in your closet exists also within your mind. It also exists within your emotions. So you see, it's horrendous. We must seek a change that is total in nature, a change that influences our identity and our values and our image. And we have to be willing to embrace the reality of this psychological image. I mean, we can justify it, we can blame others, but if we do that, there's no change. Like a great friend once said, if things don't change, things don't change. So we must be willing to embrace the reality of this psychological image. If what we see outside is telling us what we truly are, let's take advantage of that. And let's find all of these elements that build our psychological image. These 7 things that you see here on the screen, in Christianity, they are known as the 7 capital sins. And those are common in each and every one of us. Elements of anger, of greed, of envy, of lust, of laziness, of gluttony, of pride. Those creatures exist in each and every one of our psyches. And Samael says, what will be the external image of an envious one? Someone who suffers because of other successes and who secretly seeks to hurt them because of envy. I mean, what will be that external image? I'm sure that the horrendous image that I can create is as horrible as the one that you can create. But we cannot perceive that because we have made the habit of not being sincere, of being hypocritical, of making pretend. So the only one that can see that for you is yourself. And we are so fortunate that we can see ourselves reflected in our environment, in the actions and the behaviors and the thoughts of others around us. So what can we do? Let's observe the ego. Let's gain the opportunity by observing the world outside of us, recognizing that we have that within, and observing the ego, we seek to comprehend it, and as we comprehend it, we can work to eliminate it. It is important that we get rid of all of these 7 things. The greed, the anger, the lust, the laziness, etc., because destroying those defects liberates the soul that is trapped within them. The soul is light. Every time that you destroy one of these defects, you liberate the light that is trapped within it. Destroying defects liberates the soul trapped within them. There is light that comes back to you. Every time that you are capable of healing a trigger, you get back a piece of your light. And if you're getting all this light back, this results in a new image, an image that is luminous, magnetic, and that is rooted in the being. Look what Samael says. He says, if a man learns to respect himself, his life changes. Ethically, psychologically, socially, economically, politically. Self-respect. Don't forget this. What we give is exactly what we get back. Let's start with that self-respect, because the more self-respect we have, the greater will be our well-being. But we're not going to continue until I give you a word of warning. This is a word of caution. The moment that you start focusing in yourself, the moment that you start observing to comprehend, to eliminate these inferior aspects, there is going to be a force that is going to come back and fight you, and that is called the force of countertransference. This should be of surprise to no one, because we know that in the fundamental laws of physics, there's a law that states for every action, there is a reaction in the opposite direction and of the same magnitude. This force of countertransference is a limiting force that works against our most sincere efforts of self-analysis. And the key thing to understand here is that this force of countertransference is an unconscious reaction. It is rooted in our inner chaos. So what does that mean? That means that the moment that you start working on changing yourself and you get this force of countertransference, this force is going to appear as if it were coming from the outside. Because our level of being attracts our circumstances. We already learned that. As that force starts to materialize, somebody's going to be interrupting you. You're not going to have time to do your work. People are going to be criticizing you. Maybe your friends don't want to talk to you. There are going to be thousands of silly reasons. So when this happens, don't abandon the work. Learn to pause and observe what is happening in your thought. At those moments, what is manifesting in your heart? What is happening at the level of your body? Are you clenching your fists? Are you grinding your teeth? Do you want to stand up and go running? Do you want to throw yourself in a corner, cover yourself with a blanket? We have to look at these things and understand them. This force will always show up. Don't run from it. Pause and observe. If I tell you one thing, I tell you this. No one regrets being courageous. Face it and learn from the experience. Because as you do that, you will empower the consciousness to experience the laconic action of the being. This word is a big word. Laconic implies something that is mysterious. The laconic action of the being is the concise manifestation, the brief action, which in synthesis, the real being of each one of us will execute. Enabling this laconic action of the being is only possible when you start owning your own psychological processes. And what happens when the laconic action of the being starts taking place? Remember, it is a mysterious force. It is a concise manifestation. What will happen is that your consciousness will instinctively instantaneously become capable of instinctively perceiving the cosmic truths. And when your consciousness develops the ability to instinctively perceive the cosmic truths, it does so without the logic of the mind. Suddenly you see something and you understand without even thinking about it, the spiritual significance of it, the reason behind it, and you can see the thing exactly for what it is. That is a tremendously powerful faculty of the consciousness. But to enable this, we must own our own psychological processes. And this is why Thales of Miletus, that Greek philosopher back in the 6th century, engraved at the walls of the Temple of Delphi in Greece, the words "Nocete ipsum," In Latin, roughly translated, that means man, know thyself. But esoterically, that means man, know thyself, and you will know the universe and the gods. So let's take ownership of these psychological processes. How do we do that? Let's start by learning to utilize the mind. We must learn to make use of the mind. And we will tell you this, the ego is mind. In the ego itself, you will find your desires, your thoughts, your sentiments, and your willpower. Why is it in the ego? Because parts of your soul, of your consciousness, are trapped in the ego itself. Destroy the ego, take back that light. To do this, we must understand how the mind works so that we can control it. If we don't make an effort to understand how the mind works, there is no way that we can overcome the force of countertransference. So Samael says, know the diverse functionalisms of the mind and you can control it. Let me tell you how we overcome the force of countertransference. The focus here is to break the unconscious reaction of the ego. It's an unconscious reaction because it happens at the level of the subconscious. When it happens there, your intellect cannot detect it. It is happening. The mind perceives it. The brain does not know the difference of what is happening inside, what is outside, whether you see it or not. And once it perceives it, there's a chain of reactions that happen. So this unconscious reaction happening below the detection level of the intellect will take place. We must learn to become conscious of that. And to do that, we must deprogram the false education that we have received. What is some of that false education? Let me give you an example. If your crush, if your boss, if your ex ruins your day by saying something to you or doing something, you are being the victim there of that false education. This higher education, this fundamental education states that what we are seeing outside is a reflection of the interior. That the judgments that we issue to others, that the accusations that we issue are nothing more than a projection of our own defects, things that exist so deep in our psychological moon, in that dark side of that psychological moon, that we don't even want to face them. So we must learn to observe. And what we are seeking to do here to overcome the countertransference, let's observe the patterns of our reactions. This is how we learn to overcome the obstacle. Observe the patterns of our reactions. There is always a chain of egos that hold hands one with the other. Somebody may hurt your pride. That pride is connected to your anger. Your anger is connected to your frustration. That frustration is connected to an ego that is a loudmouth. You say things that you regret, and then you are cringing, and then you are waking up at 3 a.m. wondering why you said certain things. You see all this? Everybody has experienced this. So we must learn to observe the patterns of our reactions. We must learn to see the chain of events that go from one ego to another, because these egos, they assume ownership of the human machine for sometimes just a few seconds, and they satisfy their thing and they go back into the background. We see these patterns of reactions and we start seeing the structure of the ego itself. When we start learning to observe the sequence of events that lead to our triggers, we start noticing then the internal conflicts, the struggles, how we go from one idea to the next, from one perspective to the next. That is called transactional analysis. So we see those patterns of our reactions, the structure. We see the sequence of events that lead to our triggers, those transactions. And suddenly, all those conditions around us start giving us so much information, where we start seeing ourselves identified, fascinated, falling deep into the sleep of consciousness. That all becomes part of that comprehension. And as you comprehend this, fill your hands with that knowledge. Imagine that in your hands, you have the cup of the Buddha, and you fill that cup with that degree of comprehension. And when you have that, work with a power that is superior to the mind. You cannot overcome the force of transference by relying on your own mind. The mind will always justify your mistakes. It will always wash their hands and blame somebody else. The mind does not work for this. We need of a power that is superior to the mind so that we can eliminate each one of these inferior aspects. And this power is the power of Kundalini. Kundalini has been known across different cultures, and it is known as an electric fire that has the capability of transforming and illuminating men and women. And the fact is that today, there are many groups, there are many seminars, there are many YouTube videos that speak about the power of Kundalini, and a lot of people is seeking to awaken this power. A lot of people are trying to use it, and they don't know how. And this is exactly how you use it. You fill that cup of the Buddha with that comprehension. And as you have that comprehension about those defects, you invoke of your Divine Mother and you ask her to destroy the defect that you have comprehended, and she will do it. Destroy the defect, release the soul that is trapped, the fraction of soul that is trapped in that defect, reclaim that light. And the more light you gain, the more illuminated you become. This is the way that this works. But it all starts with self-respect. This is why Samael says, self-respect leads to the respect of others. It makes you a fountain of benevolence for the world, a marvelous, conscious, perfect creature, which in turn makes you a noble citizen, a role model for others, an illuminated one. This is what self-respect ends up doing for us. But we must start with the disintegration of our negative values. And it is only Kundalini what can do that for us. The mind cannot do it, so we have a challenge. It is challenging today because today there are many systems out there that are helping us, claiming that they will help us control the mind. And look, we are not speaking against these systems. All of these systems are necessary. In the condition that we are today, we need of each and every possible tool that we can use so that we can climb out of the hole that we have dug ourselves into. So this is a challenge. These are useful tools, but their usefulness is limited. I mean, we have to ask ourselves, are there success stories associated with the use of these systems? For the most part, the answer is yes. But we have to take that yes with a grain of salt. I mean, as we observe our Insta, we look at TikTok, we see whatever the boomers are uploading in Facebook. We see so many pictures. People are so happy. They're always drinking wine. They're on vacation. They're driving their fancy cars. They're out on the beach. They're doing all of these wonderful things. But how many times have you not been in one of those pictures? How many times have you not smiled for the picture only because you know that what's happening in the background sucks? How many times have you not been part of those pictures and you know the dramas that were happening behind the picture itself? You see, we have to be very astute about how is it that we work with these particular systems. How deep is the change that they offer? How permanent is that change? These systems that offer this help today, they provide some temporary relief. But the profound change comes only by invoking of this power that is superior to the mind. Engaging in observing, comprehending, and eliminating. This is what leads us into this revolution of the dialectic. As a matter of fact, Samael says, will you think that while still not knowing the how and the why of the mind, you'd still be able to make of it something perfect? Well, of course not. If our ego is mind, let's eliminate the ego. Because then the mind that operates is not the mind of the ego, but the interior mind. The direct connection between our inner being and the consciousness. So let's embrace with intention the intention of that which is divine. In terms of self-respect, let's go out there and embrace the principle of doing no harm to others, no harm to you. of always being authentic, of being respectful, of self-respect. Renounce the fruit of all your actions. Don't even expect a thank you back. Just do things for the love of serving others. Live life without expecting anything in return. Let love be the force that moves you. And as you do this, you will come to see that the real flex here is the inner mastery. Let's let the ego die so that the being can speak through our actions. Actions that, above all things, will show love, selflessness, exactitude in the results that they generate. So, dear friends, this is what we wanted to share with you tonight. Rewire your mind and reclaim your soul. And these are the lessons learned from the revolution of the dialectic. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us this evening. May all beings be happy.